Peace and love. Peace and love, y'all. Peace and love. So the last time I read something, it was this National Park Services ethnography program. And I'm going to go back and read the homepage. So the more I look at the National Park Services and the Department of Interior, which is the overseer of the program, the more I know that I have to look at the Department of Interior, and so I'm working myself in a backward motion now for a little while. Okay, so I think this is what I'm doing now. All right. Okay. This website, and I don't think I put it in, I'm going to put it in the description of all of the uploads that are regarding this. Okay, so here, the National Park Service, U.S. Department of Interior, Park Ethnography Program. I'm going to show the quick menu really quick. Look at some of the things that they have here. African Americans, Indian tribes, park neighbors, traditional park users, cultural affiliation and lineal descent studies, ethnographic landscape study. Just goes on and on. Legal mandate. So that's a lot to look at here. So I want to read the overview for the National Parks associated with African Americans and ethnographic perspective. So this is regarding the American Indian. It's not about Africa. It's about the American Indian. National parks associated with African Americans, the American Indians. An ethnographic perspective provides an interactive map linked to many of the national park sites and resources that emphasize the integral role that the American Indian played in the development of American culture, heritage, and history. As you navigate through the map, you will find descriptions of how a park is important to American Indian communities, links to the parks, and other related links. The Applied Ethnography program is concerned with living communities and the resources that are important to these groups. Again, this program is concerned with living communities and the resources that are important to these groups. The program's role in the National Park Service includes providing information about groups who assign significance to places closely linked with their own sense of purpose, existence as a community, and development as ethnically distinctive peoples. Let's see what that is. Oh, okay. Back to safety. NPS 28, chapter 10. I gotta do this. So that would be chapter 10. Let's see what is chapter. Chapter 1. Okay. That's chapter 8, management of historic and prehistoric structures. Okay. So that's something that I'll get back to. So I see how to get there. All right. We're here. Individual national parks play critical roles in shaping the lives of contemporary Americans. These include parks dedicated to the prominent abolitionist Frederick Douglass, the civil rights advocate Mary McLeod Bethune, and sites commemorating landmark events in the struggle for 20th century civil rights, such as the 1907 meeting of the Niagara Movement. Beside connections through famous people and historic events, American communities are connected to parklands in other ways. For instance, parks such as New Bedford Whaling National Historic Site or Hopewell Furnace National Historic Site were once associated with occupational groups of American whalers and iron workers, respectively. Were once associated. I think I said where. So, for instance, parks such as New Bedford Whaling National Historic Site or Hopewell Furnace National Historic Site were once associated with occupational groups of American whalers and iron workers, respectively. Other parks like Cane River National Historic Park were formerly plantations that were first reliant on slave labor, later on sharecroppers and tenant farmers. Associations may still exist with local residents of American communities and such parks due to past work relationships. Other Americans who have moved away from an area may still value plantation parklands as sites where their forefathers lived and labored. Locations of former freedmen towns and sites on the Underground Railroad are part of other parks associated with Americans today. As well, many forts, battlefields, cemeteries, and war memorials may have significance to modern Americans because of the American soldiers who manned, fought, rested, or are commemorated at these sites. To achieve the goals of the NPS, it is important to reveal the connections that today's Americans have with the national parks. This is especially true where this association does not seem to be the primary focus of the park, or where American participation in the events that the park commemorates has been historically overlooked, underrepresented, or misinterpreted. To achieve the goals of the National Park Service, it is important to reveal the connections that today's Americans have with the national parks. This is especially true where this association does not seem to be the primary focus of the park. This is especially true where this association, this connection, does not seem to be the primary focus of the park, or where American Indians' participation in the events that the park commemorates has been historically overlooked, underrepresented, or misinterpreted. To assist in this discovery process, NPS ethnographers use various research approaches to learn more about peoples associated with the parks today. Their work is also used by park planners, managers, and interpreters to manage, preserve, and interpret park cultural resources. Understanding the relationships between present day peoples and the resources that the NPS is mandated to preserve will provide for the enjoyment, education, and inspiration of this and future generations. By showing the contemporary relevance of the national parks to all Americans, including the American him or herself. Really. Now we're going to look at the map. Should have went. It's not going to the map. Oh, okay. Okay, so now this is the map. Click on the map to explore national parks associated with original Americans. Click on the map. Okay. This is the Intermountain area. Let's go with number 1. It's Texas Intermountain. And it's 5 sites. Okay, we'll look at that. I go Midwest. Okay. And I guess the order, I noticed that it doesn't have a readout like that one did. I see down south. Everything down south. Everything was down south. All right, so going back to the Intermountain, and let's look. For some reason, this is. Oh, so it's because one was pulled up already. Okay, so as you click on the number signs, now let's see. Let's go with number 1. Let's see what it says about number 1. I'm not gonna do all of these. I'm just gonna do 1, maybe 2. Amistad National Recreational Area, and that's highlightable too, because you can actually go directly and look at something there. Beautiful. Okay. Black Seminole Indian Scouts and the United States Cavalry participated in the Indian campaigns in this area between 1873 and 1881. The Scouts were descendants of runaway slaves who took refuge with the Seminole Indians in Florida. Runaway slaves that could have been other original Americans, right? The Scouts were descendants of runaway slaves who took refuge with the Seminole Indians in Florida. Beginning in 1882, the Black Seminole Indian Scouts helped maintain security for the railroad. They were stationed at Fort Clark in Bracketville, Texas, 30 miles east of this park until this park unit. Okay, sorry. They were stationed at Fort Clark in Bracketville, Texas, 30 miles east of this park unit. A descendant community of the Black Seminole Indian Scouts lives in present-day Bracketville, Texas, and maintains a cemetery where some Scouts are buried. In the 1880s, Americans were among the laborers recruiting to help build the eastern branch of the Galveston, Harrisburg, and San Antonio Railway that runs through this unit. Okay, so that's right here. Really, like, Yeah, down in Texas. So, okay. Bracketville, Texas. Some of the descendants still live there, huh? So, as we can see here, that they were fighting other hostile Indians. So it says here, look here, burial site of his heroic U.S. Army men, families, and heirs. These Seminoles came mainly from Florida about 1850, lived in northern Mexico or Texas, joined Lieutenant John Bullis and Mackenzie in ridding Texas of hostile Indians in the 1870s. So we got the census where we can see people in 1870s. I'm imagining that these people that they were fighting were not enumerated, but they were around, right? The the history of the Seminole Cemetery is as unique and historical as the Indian scouts who are buried here. Approximately 100 or more Negro Seminole scouts who played a major role in protecting the Texas frontier from hostile Indians are buried here with their descendants. The Negro Seminole Indian Scout Cemetery was established in September 1872 on the Fort Clark Reservation. April 14th, 1881, the Scouts fought their last Indian battle. 1881, huh? So they should have been enumerated. The U.S. Army, right? So I should be able to find some of these people. I'm gonna find a name. At that time, the cemetery was under supervision of Deacon Tony Wilson, who left us many years ago. Uncle Tony also left us with constant sense of pride to be proud of our ancestors with their accomplishments, to preserve and hallow these grounds that these dead may not have died in vain. So I'm going to think that Deacon Tony Wilson was one of these Seminoles. After the passing away of Uncle Tony, Mr. Warren Perryman, Uncle Warren, we respectfully called him, became chairman of our group. He passed away and was buried in Stockton, California in recent years. In recent years, Uncle Warren was responsible, helped by city officials, for obtaining from the War Department about 1940 headstones that now mark the graves of over 100 scouts buried here. His principles and ideals were: be proud of your heritage, do not forget the graves of these scouts, honor them and cherish them. During these years, there was a period of disinterest and complacency when families would come just on Memorial Day, May 30th. During these years, there was a period of disinterest when families would come only on Memorial Day, pretty much, and prepare to honor the graves. Around 1965, the restoration and preservation of the cemetery began. The local historical society, Chamber of Commerce, the Retama Garden Club, and interested individuals donated their time and finances to this effort. I'd like to see who those people were. The grandson of Scout Pompey Perryman, Carlton Perryman, reorganized the association in 1967. He was a retired sergeant for the U.S. Army and a veteran of World War II and Korea. Inspired by his uncle Warren Perryman, he accepted the challenge with vigor and determination. So these people, I wonder what these people would consider themselves today. The organization is now registered with the state of Texas, a nonprofit, and it is properly constituted with a board of directors and laws. Its sole purpose is to preserve, promote, and maintain the Seminole Indian Scout Cemetery as a historical monument. In 1977, our 4 Scout Medal winners received a new grave marker. Membership in the association includes almost every member of the Brackettville's Negro population, most of whom can trace their ancestry to one of the courageous scouts. The old scouts are gone, maybe from on high. They still watch over us with unseen eyes and guidance. These people should surely consider themselves easily Seminole Indians and should be a recognized tribe. Now here it says 1840, and that they were forced, not a blacks. Also known as the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts or Seminole Scouts. Were employed by the United States Army between 1870 and 1914. Their service played a significant role in ending the Texas Indian Wars. The Seminoles were forced to move from Florida to the Indian Territory in the 1840s. In 1849, the Black Seminoles departed the Indian Territory and entered Mexico in 1850. They were welcomed by the Mexican government as military colonists. In 1870, the United States Army issued a message to Black Seminole Chief John Horse, inviting his band to return to the United States to enlist as Indian scouts. The Black Seminoles accepted the agreement, believing that they would be granted land in the United States. Over the years, the promise of land never became a reality. The Seminoles crossed into Texas on July 4th, officially mustered into service on August 18th at Fort Duncan near Eagle Pass, Texas. In July 1872, the Scouts were moved to Fort Clark near Brackettville. On Fort Clark, they lived along the Los Morais Creek on a reservation known as the Camp. During their service against hostiles, not a single Scout out of no more than 50 men was killed or seriously injured. Four of the Scouts received the Congressional Medal of Honor for their heroic service. Disbandment and legacy, and then I'm gonna wrap it up there. But there's so many ways to go. There's so much to investigate, so much to see. Let's see, what is this? Absentee Seminole Tribe of Texas. Absentees. Disbandment and legacy. The Black Seminole Scouts were disbanded in 1914, forced to leave the Fort Clark's reservation and seek homes in Brackettville or elsewhere. Many of the Scouts are buried at the Seminole Indian Scout Cemetery in Kinney County, Texas, including Medal of Honor recipients John Ward, Pompey Factor, Adam Payne, and Isaac Payne. Descendants of the Black Seminole Scouts still live in Texas, Mexico, and many other areas in the country. Annually, the Black Seminoles meet in Brackettville, Texas to celebrate their rich heritage with family, friends, and visitors. So are they a recognized tribe or not? There they are. Why does it say absentee? Yes, I'm gonna read soldiers. I'm gonna scroll back up slowly and pay some respect to these soldiers. forced to fight, forced to relocate, forced to fight, Henry Warrior, John Wood, where did you go, John Wood? William Wilson, what does that mean? Termination of staff. William Wilson Sr., Tony Wilson. Some of them were enlisted up to 8, I see here. Tony Wilson, Peter Wilson, Kalina Wilson, Jasper Wilson, James Wilson, Isaac Wilson, Cuffy Wilson, Cuff Wilson, Billy Wilson, Bristow Wilson, Ben Wilson, Ben Wilson Sr., Ariel Wilson, Jim Williams, Henry Williams, Bill Williams, Charles Williams, Lewis White, Sam Washington, Henry Washington, George Washington, Andrew Washington, Andrew Washington, Alfred Washington, William Warrior, Scott Warrior, Carolina Warrior, John Ward, Santon Vasquez, Henry Vaughn, Bill Turner, Primus Thompson, Merrick Thompson, John Thompson, Joe Thompson, John Thomason, John Thomas, Hamilton Tardasta, Jose Tafoya, George Simmons, William Shields, John Shields, Archibald Shields, William Scott, Antonio Sanchez, Asa Ross, John Remo, Joe Remo, Charles Price, Ned Phillips, Joseph Phillips, John Phillips, Joe Phillips, Pompey Perryman, Isaac Perryman, Ignacio Perryman, James Perryman, Titus Payne, Plants Payne, Robert Payne, Isaac Payne, David Payne, Daniel Payne, Charles Payne, Caesar Payne, Adam Payne II, Adam Payne, Aaron Payne, Isaac Payne, Billy Payne, Adam Payne, Enrique Ortez, Isidro Neco, Willis Morton, William Miller, Adam McCain, Pleasance McCallop, Trinivida Mariscal, Native Dad Mariscal, Manuel Longorio, Julian Longorio, Pompey Long, William Long, Ben King, John Kibbitt, George Kibbitt, Robert Kibbitts, Samson July, Faye July, John July, Charles J. July, Charles July, Carolina July, Billy July, Ben July, Dan Johnson II, Dan Johnson Sr., Chief Johnson, Brady Jewell, Sam Jefferson, John Jefferson, Curly Jefferson, Jack, Thomas Hoskins, Charles Hughes, Morrell Hall, Dallas Grinner, Renty Grayson, July Grant, Juan Guerra, Sam Gordon, Isaac Gordon, Henry Gordon, William Jerry, Sandy Fay, Adam Fay, Vector Fausto, Thomas Fausto, Quirino Fausto, Gregorio Fausto, Toby Factor, Pompey Factor, Hardy Factor, Dindy Factor, Dembo Factor, Allen Factor, Joseph Dixon, Joe Dixon, Henry Demery, Thomas Daniel, John Daniel, Jerry Daniel, Elijah Daniel, Caesar Daniels, Charles Daniel, Joe Kuhn, Luce Casa, Zach Brunner, Peter Brunner, Monday Brunner, Joseph Brunner, James Brunner, Scipio Brunner, Jewel Brady, Zach Bowlegs, John Bowlegs, Harkless Bowlegs, Friday Bowlegs, David Bowlegs, Expectation Barrera, Juan Barra, Stevis Apahe, Louis Apahe, Tarka Lee Apache, Lipan Apache, Matriano Aguirre, Army Indian Scouts from 1870 to 1914, Seminole Creek Cherokee, Tonkaway Yaqui, and Apache Indians, Fort Clark, Texas, Muster Rolls. God bless the dead.